I think I'm kind of having a bad hair day today, but you know what? So does Dev Patel in this movie, so it's only appropriate it suits the review. Let's talk about Lion. Lion is a drama film about a 5-year-old little Indian boy named Saru, who one day accidentally falls asleep in an empty train car, which ends up taking him like 1600 kilometers away from his home, from his family, and he eventually ends up in Calcutta, where he has no knowledge of where he is and how to get back home, so he becomes homeless for what appears to be at least several months. He has to learn to survive many different challenges until eventually he is taken into an orphanage and adopted by an Australian couple. 20 to 25 years later, his handful of memories of his life in India are reawakened, and he becomes determined to find his family, which is comprised of his mother, his older brother and younger sister, and he will attempt to do this by using Google Earth, which was still a pretty new thing back when this film was taking place, I think 2008. My expectations for this film were so low that I wasn't even planning on seeing it, and that's mostly thanks to the trailer, which I unwillingly saw. I almost never watch trailers, I don't like them, but I saw this one back when I went to see Rogue One back in December, and it's not a terrible trailer, but I really wasn't a fan of it. It made it seem like the film was going to be something quite syrupy and not anything special, but then it was, and it still is, nominated for the Academy Awards for many different categories, and I usually watch all of those, so I said, okay, well, I guess I'll have to watch it now, let's just get this over with. Now, what the trailer really didn't make clear is just how linear this film is. Now, it's obvious that we have two timelines. We have Saru when he is a kid, and we have Saru when he is an adult. And I really was expecting them to rely much more on flashbacks, and the film is still guilty of this. They still use flashbacks, but it doesn't happen all that often, and I think it's as linear as a traditional drama like this can possibly get. And I really think that's a very good thing, because it's pretty clear that we have two halves. We have the first half of the film, which is much more riveting and much more stronger than the second half, which I think kind of fumbles a little bit. The first half of the film is little Saru surviving in Calcutta. And like I said, that part of the film is quite riveting. I mean, we see him, he has to search for a new place to sleep every single day on the streets. He has to steal food. Sometimes he comes across some pretty shady people who seem to offer him shelter, but ultimately it is revealed that they have much more sinister intentions. There's a scene in the film that frightened me, actually. It's when him and a whole bunch of other kids are fleeing in a subway from some dudes who are coming to kidnap them. And I want to ask if anyone knows, can you please tell me, what is this? Is this something that actually happens? Is this a phenomenon in India? Do people just kidnap kids in the middle of the day in plain sight and no one does a thing? I mean, what do they do? Where do they take these kids? What's happening? I mean, I'm not even sure I want to know, because I'm thinking it's probably something quite horrible. But if anyone knows, then please tell me. What's also really cool about this first half is that it is all in Hindi and in Bengali. And this being an American film, an American production, this was something I really admired about it, that they didn't just have the characters speak English but with an accent. No, they had them speak in their language. Albeit this first half of the film has a fairly minimum amount of dialogue, which was quite intentional. The director did say that he wanted to use as little dialogue as possible. It really gives the film its authenticity. It really gives it the authenticity it needs, despite the fact that all the scenes that take place in India were not filmed in India, they were filmed in Tasmania. That's a little trivia for you there. Not to mention that the little kid playing Saru is just truly a natural talent, and he was partly chosen because the director felt that he was reminiscent of Charles Chaplin in his physicality. And you know what? I can kind of see that. I mean, this is a kid, this is a character I could take seriously and truly believe that when he is running from those kidnappers, he is actually running for his life, and he is not just running because he is being directed in a film. Of course, in the back of my mind, I knew that was the case, but he was very, very convincing. But the film kind of takes a little nosedive during the middle when, fast forward 20 years later, Saru is now a man living in Australia who pretty much seems to have everything going for him. He has promising job aspirations, his adoptive parents are just the best, he has a great girlfriend and great friends all around him, yet he is still troubled because of his unresolved past. And I was reminded of Boyhood, in the sense that in both of these films we have a character who we see as a child, as someone naive and someone who can't really make sense of the world just yet, and then we see them years later all grown up. And the problem with this character, Saru, is that he is just not that interesting as a grown-up, because he is pretty much perfect. He is good looking, he is charismatic, he is intelligent, he is successful, he is a well-adjusted human being, and all around well-adjusted human beings don't always make for very interesting film characters. Which is why I wish the film either focused on, or at least featured much more prominently, the relationship between Saru and his adoptive brother, because this couple, shortly after adopting Saru, also adopted another other boy, and unfortunately it was clear from the get-go that this boy is the opposite of Saru. He is not charismatic, he was not a well-adjusted human being. It was clear from the get-go that he had some mental issues, and by the time they reached adulthood, the two adopted brothers really didn't get along. In fact, they hated each other, and this caused a lot of distress, especially for the mother, and just a lot of friction within the family in general. Of course, it is mentioned that the brother started dabbling in drugs some time ago, probably in both the abuse and the trafficking of it, and in very typical fashion almost never contacts the family, almost never comes visiting unless he needs something, but it's usually the family who try to contact him, and I thought the actor playing the character was quite convincing, and I wish that this was a subplot that was explored a little bit more, because I think it would have added a little bit more conflict to the film. But instead, they chose to focus on the friction within the romantic relationship between Saru and his girlfriend, played by Rooney Mara, who, keep in mind, is the one character in this film that's not based on just one single real-life person. She is a combination of several of Saru's real-life girlfriends who were with him during this period. Now, about Rooney Mara, I have to be honest with you, I'm not really a huge fan of hers. She hasn't really won me over, at least not yet. She seems to have like this one face she can make, and that's this one. Constantly being surprised of everything going on around her. And that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, because she happens to be a very beautiful woman, but there might be something wrong with me. But in my opinion, either she doesn't have range, or she just hasn't been given the opportunity to use her full range in the movies she has been until now. And the same thing with Dev Patel as well. I mean, fine actor, more than adequate. But again, I don't really think he has been given the chance to use his full range here, because he seems to be in just this one single mood. He is moping constantly. His moping is just never ending. Now, I don't hate these actors. I didn't hate them here. I think they did a good job. I just wish their characters were a little bit more nuanced. But the character and the performance I did love in this film was Nicole Kidman's. She doesn't appear a whole lot in the film, but every time she is in a scene, you get to see like a different side to her character. She is basically the bedrock that tries to keep this family together, but unfortunately due to certain circumstances, that's not always possible. And one of my favorite scenes in the film, Saru is like apologizing to her, saying that, look, I'm really sorry you couldn't have your own kids and you had to adopt us, two idiots, but you weren't really realizing that you were adopting our pasts as well. And she like turns and gives him this look like, what are you talking about? We could have had kids. We decided not to. That was the reason I fell in love with your father, is that we thought that having our own kids didn't necessarily mean that we were doing anything good for the world, but adopting you too and giving you the life you deserve, or giving you the life that everyone basically should deserve, and preventing you from suffering, like that's what we decided to do together. And just, man, that scene, I mean, wow, that to me that's like the ultimate act of goodness. And Nicole Kidman's delivery and execution is just spot on, and it's no surprise because in real life she in fact is the mother of two adopted children herself. And in this scene, man, you can really just tell that that's Nicole Kidman right there. That's not acting, that's her giving it her absolute all. So I would be lying if I said that this film didn't have me choking up during certain moments. Not just during the end, especially during the end, but several different times. And it's very similar to Room. It's this year's Room, both structure-wise and tone-wise. Like having the first half of the film be our characters trying to escape a situation they are in, and then having the second half be them trying to cope with being free and coping with this better life, but still having them being haunted by the unresolved past. So yeah, I would recommend it. It's fine. It's better than what I was expecting. It's okay. And hey, since this film is nominated at many different categories at this year's Academy Awards, which is going to take place about 2 weeks from now approximately, or if you're watching way in the future, it probably already took place in the past, but whatever. What are your favorite nominations at this year's Oscars? It can either be the movies or it can either be performances, whatever you prefer. Don't forget to leave your comments down below. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can see you later with other reviews. Until then, folks, as always, stay cool, stay awesome, goodbye.